Where were you on the evening of June 25th, 2009? Little did any one of us know that the NBA was about to give way to one of the most unexpected, legendary players in NBA history. Little did we know that this skinny, light-skinned sharpshooter would one day be recognized as one man who has revolutionized the game of basketball. With his unmatched skill set, astonishing records, and transformative impact on the sport, fellas, it's time you and I have a serious conversation. So strap in, this one is serious. Where most people go wrong anytime they want to rank their favorite athletes in sports is that they feel that in order to get their point across, they need to tear down another player by exposing his most glaring weaknesses. But guys, that's not the case being made here, at least for me personally. All I'm making the case for is that Steph Curry unquestionably needs to be on every NBA fan's Mount Rushmore. And well, the reasoning is quite simple. Stephen Curry's unrivaled shooting ability is perhaps the most persuasive argument for his case as, if not the greatest basketball player ever, at the very least, a top 4 or 5 player in history. His influence on the game extends beyond statistics and records. It's about fundamentally changing how basketball is played. Curry's skills from beyond the arc have revolutionized offensive strategies in the NBA. Take some time to think long and hard about this fact. In Steph Curry's MVP season in 2015, only 14 NBA players shot at least 40% from the three-point line. And just 3 of those 14 players weren't either a point guard or a shooting guard, meaning that we are talking about strictly big guys here, centers and power forwards that were once seen as traditional back to the basket guys with little expectation to do much of anything beyond 10 feet from the basket. But that has all changed rapidly. In this past 2023 season, there were 36 players that shot 40% or better from three-point range, and less than half of those players were either a point guard or shooting guard. Which means in today's NBA, the ratio of the average elite shooting big man and elite shooting guard is relatively equal. This is absolutely mind-blowing to think about, considering it was just less than 1 decade ago. It was an extreme rarity to see big players shooting the ball. What Steph has done from a personal standpoint is astonishing enough, truly bends my mind every time I think about his career in its totality. But what doesn't get talked about enough is how he's taken one thing, one ability that he is so head and shoulders above everyone at doing, and has used it as a superpower to transform a league that's had only around 4,000 players to ever suit up in its entire history. His remarkable shooting range has forced defenses to adjust, stretching them to guard against not just his deep range shots, but shots from almost every other player in the league, because all players do now is put up three-pointer after three-pointer now that Steph has taught them that 3 points is just a ton more meaningful than 2 points. This phenomenon, commonly referred to as the Curry effect, has changed the dynamics of basketball strategy at all levels. The Curry effect has changed the entire NBA's approach to offensive game planning by encouraging them to adopt a more analytically driven approach, which has been a godsend for us fans because we love high-scoring, action-packed games with guys launching threes from the third lot of the 9th garage outside the arena. Seriously. The offensive rating for NBA teams has steadily increased over the years, indicating that teams are producing more points with fewer possessions. But if we take from before Steph entered the NBA all the way to the 2020-21 season, the league-wide offensive rating was 107.6 in 2008, and in the 2020-2021 season, it had risen way up to 112.3. For perspective, the average points per 100 possession in the NBA during the 1990 NBA season was 107.4. 10 years later, in 2000, that number, believe it or not, fell to 97 points per 100 possessions. But if somehow you weren't convinced that this much impact Steph has had on the game doesn't make him a Mount Rushmore figure, I'll double down in a way that should absolutely leave zero doubts in anyone's mind that the baby-faced assassin deserves his baby face on Mount Rushmore. What does every single one of the very best of the best get credited for the most when their name is brought up in the proverbial GOAT conversation? For about 99% of NBA fans, they refer to the age-old argument of he changed the way guys play at his position. And that brings me to my second point. Michael Jordan's influence on the wing position was so big that teams wanted a high flyer with a rip-your-throat-out scoring style coupled with his tenacious and overbearing defensive capabilities. LeBron James's influence was so great that small forwards began to look at as point forwards with the ability to guard all 5 positions. Magic Johnson made it so that having a starting point guard darn near the size as most team centers became the new meta. Point guards were seen as playmakers and facilitators, responsible for setting up their teammates. Steph Curry, however, has redefined the role of the point guard, showcasing that a player at his position can also be the most prolific scorer on the team. This transformation has paved the way for a new generation of guards who emphasize scoring while maintaining strict playmaking responsibilities. Put it this way, in 2010, if an average high schooler walked into his basketball tryouts one day and told his coach that he wants to be the team's combo guard, the coach would have turned him around, sent him back home, and told him to choose another sport because that wouldn't have made any sense.
Mr. Cruz, you do not want to know the answer to that question.
But guys, times have clearly changed, and we're watching another Steph Curry-inspired revolution unfold in front of our very eyes. Steph Curry's ability to lead the league in scoring while maintaining high assist numbers showcases his dual threat capabilities. He has shown us that point guards can dominate on the offensive end without sacrificing their team's overall performance. Since 2014, Steph Curry has been proving what most of us deemed pretty much impossible just years earlier, and that is being the best player on a championship-winning team despite his small size and stature. But nothing proved the legend of Steph Curry more than what he did for those 2 seasons in 2015 and 2016, when he not only was the rare exception to the unwritten rule that small guys can't lead teams on their own, he did it all while averaging numbers offensively even beyond Michael Jordan territory. Now that's something that still sounds fictional and made up even 7 years later. On February 27, 2016, Curry made an astonishing 12 three-pointers in a single game, setting a new NBA record at the time. But as he was on his way to shattering his own record of three-pointers made in the season and defying all the rules and principles of the game, somehow, someway, this 6'2" or 3-inch tall flamethrower was about to lead his team to break the single-season record for wins by a team. He played point guard, was still following the basic protocols that any point guard goes by on any team, but he was doing all that while scoring 30 points per game and shooting and making the most three-pointers in NBA history. That's like taking Magic Johnson as the leader and assist master he was and making him Bill Russell defensively. Simply put, the league never could have imagined seeing someone play the game to complete mastery using strictly his skill set and ability to make shots. There's never been anything physical or overpowering about him. He's taken a big man's game and turned it into his own playground while doing things other humans aren't capable of doing, which takes us to our third and final point of the video. Apart from his genuine personality, philanthropic efforts, and humble demeanor that have made him a role model for aspiring athletes and fans worldwide, Steph Curry's cultural and global impact across the world has given fans like some of you watching out there the understanding that you don't have to be 6'8" with a jetpack for hops to play in the NBA. All you need is a flick of the wrist. Steph Curry has made the impossible look truly possible. While it's hard to put it in numbers and quantify just how massive Steph's influence has been on small and large communities alike, the eye test tells you all you need to know. Turning on your TV, SportsCenter highlights, talk radio, debate shows, literally everything happening around us is constantly reminding us how much the youth and even older people have been shaken by witnessing Steph Curry's career. And if that isn't enough telling, take Shaquille O'Neal as an example. For a solid 8 or 9 years, Shaq terrorized the NBA in a way that made defending him a literal death sentence. You were practically digging your own grave if you had the misfortune of matching up with him because he had the girth and power of an absolute tank. But even the most fear-striking interior force the NBA has seen, and a guy who's made a Hall of Fame career out of revolutionizing the game in his own right, even Shaq called Steph Curry his favorite NBA player. And Steph became the reason Shaq got back in the gym and wanted to work on his three-point shot at 51 years old and retiring from the game 12 years ago. I simply can't put into words where this man has taken this game, the sport that we all cannot live without, and we should all thank him for that. And the best way to thank him might just be by taking the high road up the mountain to carve out his face next to the other 3 icons on Mount Rushmore. No one saw him coming. Some thought he'd just be an average NBA player with an elite shooting stroke. And most just saw him as just another player that comes around in the NBA draft every year. Nearly 15 years later, he's still looking as great as ever and will only continue to raise the bar for all-time individual supremacy in the NBA.